Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. Welcome to your State of Origin Game 1 deep dive. We'll probably only do a podcast, as detailed as this for Game 1. You'd think that the sides will be relatively similar for Games 2 and 3. If not, we'll break it down on the podcast. But this is more so just to get a real good idea of what we could be looking at for State of Origin. It's almost the preview before the preview. We're going to go through the 17s, every single talking point regarding the 17s, the guys that missed out. We'll talk about my predictions as well, where I went wrong, where I went right, things like that as well. All of that is going to be on this podcast, so it is a long one. Strap yourselves in because it is going to be a great one as well. We're literally going to get into the nitty-gritty. I've spent the past, I'd say, 4 hours while I've been at the gym, while I've been at a family dinner, which was quite, irregular as well. Me sitting at the table with a notepad, writing down notes. But for the past at least 4 and a bit hours, I've been writing down all of the notes for the team. What players are going to play what side of the field, how they're going to play their footy, defensive combinations. It's literally as deep as you could possibly go into these team lists. So we're going to get stuck straight into it. We'll start off with New South Wales because New South Wales are the best, and then we're going to go into Queensland. Make sure if you haven't already, though, to subscribe to the podcast, become a part of the Big LEZ'S League community. Let's get straight into it. New South Wales. What we're going to start with is the snubs, the guys that we think should have made this 17, or at least the squad, and didn't, particularly after the performances on the weekend and just their form throughout the start of the year. First one for me, and I think it's probably the most obvious one, but I think at the same time, he's probably taken himself out of it, being in the side in the future, even though Laurie Daly actually came out today when this podcast is being recorded and said that he's still a chance of making the side, pending if there's injuries and, his form throughout the period, if he does have a turnaround in attitude and things like that. But it's Terrell May. I think that he was very unlucky to not be in contention to start with a few guys being ahead of him. I think that in the interview where Laurie Daly was going through the thought behind his selections, he thinks that Max King has been in the better form. I don't think it's necessarily a form thing as to why Max King was picked over Terrell May. A lot of people are going to say that it is solely based on attitude and things like that. But if you actually look into the intricacies of their games and what makes them different as players, Max King can be very aggressive. He hits the line hard. He hits the line with purpose. He does everything with purpose. His defense is really aggressive as well. He can have a real impact on the start of a game and match the physicality of the other team. Terrell May, and I think it's been the criticism of him for at least on the podcast for us for the past few years, or since he's come in and played regular first grade, a lot of the time when he runs into the line, he doesn't really run into the line with a lot of purpose. His objective of a tackle is to find an offload or to get the footy into second phase and give the ball to one of his spine members off an offload, off a flick pass or something like that to really break the game open. And especially around tied forwards, he can be quite dangerous. But in the Origin arena, you sort of want those tough guys that are going to attempt to break the line, attempt to hurt you. And while Terrell May, I think, could have flicked a switch coming into the Origin arena and done a good job if he was manhandled the right way, I think that, at the moment, King, in regards to aggression and intent in games, defensively and attacking wise, was probably the better pick. Now, I say the word intent and mean it as well. Statistically, if we're looking at stats only, Leniu is the better attacker and he's also the better defender. May is the better attacker and he's also the better defender. But when it comes to intent and aggression, I'd say that King probably has him on that front. His intent is a lot better, Max King, when he hits the line, and his aggression is a lot better as well, attacking-wise and defensively, whereas, as I said, Terrell May, he has still that offload-first mentality. So that's why I think that King, at the moment, for Game 1, particularly with the form and the footy that we've seen over the past few weeks, was probably the better pick. Now, what I will say is that Terrell May, in that Origin audition on the weekend against the Bunnies, he did flick that switch for a little bit there. There was a little section in the last 20 or so minutes where he generally was trying to break the line and trying to be dangerous. And I really like to see that from him, and I wish we got to see more of it, throughout the rest of the season. Like, he gets great post-contact meters. His post-contact works great. He's got a good offloading game. he can beat you with the post-contact meters, and that's where a lot of his meterage actually comes from, actually post-contact rather than breaking the line and things like that. But yeah, look, I think that, as I said, when it comes to aggression, when it comes to intent, whether it be attacking or defense, and just really going in the grind of a game, I think Max King's actually a great pick. And I think that, both would have done very well, but Max King's the one that Laurie Daly's gone with, and I think it's a really good option. So May, for me, was very unlucky to miss out, but I think it is great for Laurie Daly to still have him in the back of his mind for game 2 and 3, pending what happens and what this side could look like with injuries and things like that as well throughout the game next week. Knock on wood, there's none. Patrol May unlucky. I thought that Keon Kalon-Watangi, after this week's performance and previous performances since moving into the middle as well, he would have been a great addition on the bench. I think that with Lenu and Young on the bench, you do still need a bigger guy in that bigger middle on the bench, someone that is going to carry a bit of weight, someone that's going to go with Lenu and have that aggression and intensity. While I think that Keon could have done that, I think that Max King and Lenu is going to be a real nice combo off the bench. I think that those two are going to fire up. Keon would have been great at 13. If you would have moved Keon to 13 and have Yo playing that front row role off the bench, I think that could have worked really well. But yeah, Keon, I think, was very unlucky. I think if you were to put him in jersey 17, he wouldn't look out of place, and he has that Origin experience. He's played State of Origin footy before. So that's where I think that he sort of puts himself ahead of Max King, maybe in their experience regard. But yeah, Max King's earned his spot, like what he's been through, and we'll talk about it a little bit later when we analyse the 17. He definitely deserves that spot, Max King. I totally agree with the selection. He's not a guy that I would have thought of when we've obviously thrown in our predictions, and he wasn't actually in my predicted side, but, he's definitely someone that deserves to be there. I have got Luai here as a snub as well. I think that Luai would have been a great addition for the extended bench, at least. If you're not going to pick him in the starting side, you pick him in the extended bench. I think he's just great cover. We'll talk about cover in a second, because I think it's a real issue with the squad that they've got, just the spine coverage. But Luai definitely, for me, should have been at least in the squad. Tedesco and Ryan Pappenhausen, the same for me. One of those three guys, I think, should have been in a jersey 19 or 20, just to have as coverage if there is injury in and around the outside backs, and also in the spine. I think you've obviously got Stretch there, but he's only really going to cover wing and centre. He can't really do much else. Maybe back row at a pinch, but are you really going to take that risk there with a guy like Stretch when you've got, Stefano and Hamole Olakawatu there that can cover edge and middle? You're not going to put Stretch there. So it's really only wing and centre that he can cover. Campbell Graham, mind you, Campbell Graham, he's been in okay form. His aggression and his kick returns have been great, and I think that's what Laurie Daly's really pinpointed on, the fact that he has international experience, and he's been a guy that's been in the waiting for State of Origin for quite a while. That would obviously come into it as well. And I can understand his selection in this side. I feel great that he's in this team. Campbell Graham, I would have loved to have seen him, probably at the start of the year. He probably would have been in my 17, to be honest. I think he might have been in a 17 that I did right at the start of the season, before any footy was played. But I just feel like they could have been a little bit more spine coverage, even if they were to bring Isaiah Katoa into the squad, and just have him there for the experience learning, like they've done with a few other players over in Queensland in the past. But look, that's not what they've gone for here. Katoa was a name that I did have down here, just in regards to having in the squad for a bit of experience as well. I thought that would have been nice. And that's pretty much it. Keon, May, Luai, Tedesco, Pappenhausen, and Katoa were probably some snubs there that I thought should have been included in the squad somewhere, but obviously haven't in this side. Without further ado, let's get stuck into the 17. What we're going to do, we're going to go position by position. We're going to go through my predicted team, my final predicted team. Before the team list did come out, we'll go through it as well on the podcast and just go position by position, where I went right, where I went wrong, and we'll talk about it. So, my predictions and this side. So, the actual side has Edwards at fullback. Edwards was obviously my fullback. Brian To'o I had on the left wing. He's also the left wing in this side. Latrell Mitchell left centre. I think that was an obvious one. Critter right centre. Again, a pretty obvious one. I had him as well. I had Lomax in my last predicted side as well. So, pretty much 1 to 5 was all good. I had Moses and Cleary in the halves. I had Cleary at 6 and Moses at 7. But obviously that won't matter too much. We'll sort of dissect their roles in a second as well. But they're in the halves. Barnett and Haas are the starting front rowers. I think after the whole Team A saga, that was going to be everyone's front row starting, and I think that those two have a really good starting combination, which we'll talk about as well in a second. Robson at 9. Everyone had Robson at 9. Martin and Angus Crichton. I did have Liam Martin and Hudson Young. I just think Hudson Young's going to be the better starter. Again, it will be something we talk about on the podcast in a second. But Martin and Angus were the ones that were picked. So a little bit of a swap deal there for me. Young is on the bench for Origin. So we basically got those right. Yo at 13. We've got Yo at 13 as well. And then the bench for this game is Watson, Lenu, Young, King. We had Watson, Olakawatu, Spencer Lenu, Mitch Barnett in our side. That was with our Team A starting, who obviously did not get picked. So obviously a few different ones in there. I did have Terrell May in my side. I also had Hamole Olakawatu in there. I think I might have even changed that to Angus Crichton in my last predicted side. I can check the Instagram now, actually, because I'll be able to tell you. Hopefully this doesn't go off with a reel or something. Awesome. Who did we have? I believe we did change it to Angus Crichton. Yeah, no, we didn't. We should have, but we didn't. All good. Yeah, I think that for the most part we were pretty spot on, and I think that the New South Wales side was pretty easy to pick. In regards to the reserves, our 18, 19, 20 was Pappenhausen, Katoa, Egan. They have currently Stretch, Stefano, and Hamole Olakawatu. So a little bit different in the reserves regard, and we're going to talk about that in a second. We might even kick off with it. So let's get stuck into some of the main points here for this 17. We'll start off with the extended bench. I think that it is extremely worrying that we don't have coverage for our spine in this extended squad. You've got Campbell Graham, you've got Stefano Utswikamana, who's a front rower and exclusively a front rower, and then Hamole Olakawatu, who has played middle in the past for New South Wales, but is more so exclusively a edge back rower. So you've got cover for centre and wing, you've got cover for front row, and you've got cover for back row. That's about it. That puts a ton of pressure on Connor Watson, in my opinion, to cover any spine position that goes down throughout a game or any spine position that goes down before kickoff. It's a lot of pressure to put on Connor Watson. Obviously, Connor Watson is being brought into this squad as the specialist guy. That can cover a ton of positions, and I'm sure that was in the back of Laurie Daly's mind when he was picking this 17, and it's probably why he hasn't picked too much coverage in key spine positions in his reserves list. He's obviously got more forwards than he does outside backs, which is fair enough if you've got Watson there. But I just think that it's unneeded pressure on Connor Watson to have to come in and play halfback, play 5'8", play fullback, play centre at a pinch if he has to. Obviously, before during the game, if there's an injury, he's going to have to go into the outside backs, which is pretty standard anyway. But in regards to before kickoff, if the spine goes down, they're in some real Barney. They probably are able to bring someone in, but if it is in those dire stages where it's literally the night before or the morning of, knock on wood, that's worst case scenario. It's a lot of pressure on Connor Watson. I just don't think it's needed. I think that you can afford to bring in a Katoa, you can afford to bring in a Tedesco, a Ryan Pappenhausen, or most likely a Jerome Luai, who can cover 5'8", halfback, hooker. He's played for Samoa before. He can cover a ton of positions, and it is, it just puts you at ease in regards to having that coverage there in those key positions. Luai could probably, probably hop into the centres at a pinch if you needed to. You can obviously move then Trell or Critter to fullback if the fullback goes down. So that they have that extra coverage there. The fact that they don't worries me. If we do get a key injury in the spine, at the moment there's nothing really reported in regards to injuries in the spine. Knock on wood, there isn't. What does concern me though is actually Dylan Edwards. Because Dylan Edwards for me isn't fully fit. He is playing at about 60-65% at the moment, which is still pretty good, but I'd want him at 100%. It does worry me a little bit him coming into Origin if he does get injured and go down. Yeah, Latrell Mitchell probably goes to fullback, but I want Latrell exclusively in the centres. I'd even rather put Critter at fullback, to be honest. If we had to put someone at fullback, it'd probably be Critter. But yeah, look, I mean, that in itself just worries me. I don't want to have to do that either. I know that Edwards is a tough blugger and he'll play through anything, but I don't want to have to be in that scenario. I'd rather have a bit more cover in the squad where if he does go down before kickoff, which has happened in the past or happened even last year, he was selected at fullback. Obviously had to pull out due to a quad injury and Tedesco slotted in when Hines was the halfback. So hopefully Edwards is all good, but that full fitness worries me a little bit. In regards to other points that I've got here as well, let's go through it. Edwards picked over Tedesco and Pappenhausen in general. I think that it's not a big call because he's the incumbent. He played there last year. He played in a winning series. You pick Dylan Edwards. You have faith in him. Tedesco's been the informed fullback in the competition. I don't think that that's a real outrageous statement. And Pappenhausen's past 4 weeks have been nothing short of sensational. He would do a great job there for New South Wales. The only thing being a smaller body is just the defence. If someone was to break the line, they'd probably beat Ryan Pappenhausen one-on-one, whereas Edwards would obviously tough it out for me, which is the only real concern I would have with Ryan Pappenhausen playing Origin. But Tedesco is a similar build. Pappenhausen's a different style of footy as well. If you're picking Pappenhausen, you're playing a very fast second phase football type of game, whereas Edwards is, the kick returns, the meterage out of yardage. So is Tedesco really. So, look, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that did have Tedesco as their fullback for New South Wales due to form, and that's what Laurie Daly was picking off at the end of the day, right? He said he was picking off form. So, I mean, Edwards, great pick. He's going to do well. But it is worth having that discussion. Tedesco being the informed fullback in the competition at the moment, Ryan Pappenhausen's form, Edwards picked over those guys. It is a discussion point. The Momax combo, with Mitchell Moses and Zach Lomax. Super excited to see that. I really do love these two. And I think that last year's Origin series was a little bit of a hint of their combination. The fact that they're going to be together again, not only that, they've had a game together now in Clubland and really had a chance to sort of play around with that combination leading into Origin. If you play your cards right, you've got the exact same right edges last year of Moses, Martin, Critter and Lomax, which would be great. To have that familiarity there. It's probably how I'd play my cards. We'll talk about combinations and edges in a second. But the Momax combo for me is exciting. Having those two together on the same edge, Moses kicking over to Lomax, it'll be great to watch. Those two are going to be close to unstoppable as well if they have a fair crack. What does sort of get me, though, with Lomax, and I think it will be a tougher test for him this year, looking at this Queensland side and how I would put that together, sort of leading into a Queensland a bit of chat here as well, a bit of a segue, not a segue because we're going to get to Queensland after New South Wales, but a bit of a hint into what we're talking about for Queensland. It'll be Coates v Lomax, just with the other sides put together. So it will be harder for Lomax in regards to aerial footy off kicks because, obviously we know how much of an aerial specialist, especially after the weekend, that good friend of the show, Xavier Coates, can be. Almost a marksman in the AFL. But that's going to be a much tougher test for Lomax, being up against Coates, and I think that's a strategical thing. I think that's why Val Holmes has been picked on the wing, and they've moved Coates back to his natural position on that left side, is to cover Lomax as well. Just with those kicks, he is going to be a threat. So I think that Lomax, it's going to be a lot tougher of a test. But what I really like, though, is that it is going to be a different edge for the Queensland side. It's going to be a very different edge. But it's going to be exactly the same edge that we had last year on the right side for New South Wales of Critter, Lomax, Moses, and Martin, if you play your cards right. So that Momax combo is going to be great. Just obviously a little bit worried with the Lomax and Coates battle. As well, just in regards to some other points that we've got written down here. Back rowers. Obviously Cleary back in Origin. His right back rower that is on his side of the field is Liam Martin. There is maybe a discussion point that you move Angus Crichton over to his unnatural side there on the right and you move Martin with Cleary on the left. So you have that combination there. For me, I wouldn't do it, but it is a discussion point with that familiarity with combinations and things like that, which is really important. Maybe there's a chance we do see Martin line up on the left. I think with Angus Crichton picked, you probably leave him on the left side. I think that him and Cleary can build up a really nice combo on that left. And then you have Moses and Crichton, who already have Moses and Martin, who have a great combination on the right side already from last year's series. You know, Martin scored a try off a beautiful short ball and kick from Moses as well. So those two have a real nice combination. So I'd keep that as it is, but it is a discussion point. If you want to have Martin over with Cleary, you probably do consider maybe moving and swapping those edges around. I just think, though, with the continuity from last year and, the combinations that we've already built from last year's series, that right side's already exactly the same. Wouldn't look to change it, but it is something I thought I'd bring up. Let's get into the thick of it in regards to the halves. Moses and Cleary, how's it going to work? Obviously, Cleary wears the 7 on his back. Moses with the 6. For me, that tells me that this is Cleary's team and he will be calling the shots in this side. Do I 100% agree with that? To be honest, not really. I'd rather Cleary in a 6 jersey. You take the pressure off his back in regards to running the side. You take him back psychologically to that 2023 grand final against the Brisbane Broncos where Cogger went on and Cleary just played second receiver and he set up tries. He set up one for Leota, scored one himself, and that's what won the Penrith Panthers the game. So maybe having Cleary as that second receiver and getting him back into that mindset where he just plays his natural game, creates opportunities, maybe that's the play that you go for here with a Mitchell Moses. You have him with Nathan Cleary, have him creating those opportunities on the left side, play second receiver, and have that Hines and Trindle sort of dynamic where they each chime in on their individual sides and become the halfback and alternate between those two roles, because both can direct games very well, but both can also play that second receiver role and run the footy very, very well. So I think that them alternating can work. They can swap around between 6 and 7. But mainly, I would have Moses as the 7, the guy kicking the ball mostly on last, and Cleary just plays off the back of a lot of what Moses does, and just really calms himself and gets himself into that second receiver, creating opportunities mindset, which I love watching Cleary play in that mindset too. You see glimpses of it in games when Cleary gets the momentum, and it is just beautiful to watch. So that Cleary and Moses dynamic is going to be a beautiful thing. It's going to be an artwork, and I cannot wait to see it. Let's get stuck into the next bit. Obviously, a lot of chat around Spencer Leniu. Should have he been picked? Should he have not? I think that he is an essential piece in this puzzle in regards to the impact off the bench. You're probably going to get 2 10-minute stints of him just coming on, being an absolute mongrel, going at the defense, running over blokes, hopefully not dropping the ball like he did against Max King, but just going after the game. That's what I want from Spencer Leniu. 2 10-minute stints. And what we've actually done is we've broken down minutes. Now, this isn't exact. I've literally just written down how many minutes I would like each player to play. It doesn't work out continually, and it doesn't really add up when you obviously count up the minutes for each player. But ideally, I've got an idea in my head about how many minutes I want each forward to play. Leniu, for me, is 20 minutes. So I just want him 2 10-minute stints, one in the first, one in the second, where it just comes on. He's a mongrel. It allows, obviously, guys like Haas, probably who I want to play about 50 minutes, and Barnett about 40 minutes, just to have those big stints. I think that Yo is going to play close to 60 as well. So just allows those guys to have a little bit of a spell before coming on and playing some big minutes. I think that they're essential to the win as well, Haas and Barnett, just in regards to their dynamic as well. But yeah, Leniu, I think, definitely deserves to be there. And as I said, he's an essential piece to that puzzle as well. I also think, talking about essential pieces to the puzzle, I am so thrilled that Lomax was picked. I really, really like Lomax. I think that the game that he had last week pretty much locked him in. I think that he is going to be an essential part of this puzzle in regards to his yardage carries, in regards to his aerial work. As I said, he's going to be under a little bit of pressure with Coates being there on that left-hand side, marking up against the Blues' right side. But I think that out of the 3 choices, which were Lomax, Tom Trbojevic, Kiraz, he's probably the most fit out of the lot, and he's probably, ballpark the best form currently out of the lot. I know he's been back for one game, but even before the injury, and when he was injured as well, taking the big moments. I love the fact that Lomax was picked, and I think that, as I said, he's probably been ballpark the better form than these two other guys in Kiraz and Turbo. Kiraz probably has the best stats out of the lot, and he's played the most games this year out of the lot. But for me, Lomax, I love that he's in that jersey. And as I said, for combos and for continuation of the combos that we had from last year, just looking for the word there, it did not come. I love the fact that Lomax has been picked. Yes, he's a little ginger still, but out of the lot, he's probably the least amount of ginger compared to Tom Trbojevic, who is borderline, needs at least 2 weeks rest. And Kiraz obviously out with a calf injury for the next 4 to 6 weeks, which is really unfortunate. Obviously, Stretch comes into that combo as well. Campbell Graham, if we do have an injury in the outside backs, obviously Critter's battling with a groin issue. He's going to be assessed throughout the week. We'll see what happens with him. But, if Lomax or Critter go down, Stretch is obviously a good option as well. His yardage carries are going to be equally as good, and I can trust him to be a try scorer there. He's played for Australia on big stages and done well, so I have no doubt that he could kill it in the Origin arena. I love the fact that Barnett and Haas are starting. It's a great starting combo. They both play big minutes. They're going to be integral to the middle. So is Yo. I was more keen on Yo at 13 when May was in the side, just because May can ball play. He can sort of get into those wedge shapes, as that first receiver. You have maybe even a Yo running his block for him as he gets the ball out to the sweeper, being the 6. He could play that wedge role really well. He can also, with his offloading ability and short ball playing as well to a Barnett or someone, whoever's next to him. It would have just been really good to see. And I think that it would take so much pressure off Yo, and Yo can just play that front row role that we've seen from him and alternate between, being the first receiver with May. That dynamic could work really well. Yo being at 13 now is it's pretty much the onus is on him to play 60 and to be the ball player there at 13 until Watson comes on. I think Watson's only going to get 20 minutes. I think that it'll either be at 9 or it'll be at lock. But I think he'll probably only get 20 minutes in this game. It really does depend on how the game goes, and it's hard to predict. But I think in this sort of game with a smaller pack, I think that he will probably only get 20 minutes, the last 20. I think that maybe 15 of those will be at lock, and then maybe the last 5 or 10 will be at hooker. But we'll have to wait and see. I think Robertson will play 70, close to 80 as well, because he can just do it. He's done it in Origin before. Other chats here, obviously backline combos. You've got Critter, you've got To'o. They ended up defending together in Origin 1 when Suoliti went down. They both defended together on that right side, and their kick pressure and just their want in defense was outstanding. There is a real good argument to put those together again, but then that's at the cost of potentially either moving Latrell out of his natural position or moving Lomax out of his natural position on the right wing. I don't want to move Latrell out of left center. He's the best left center in the game. I don't want to make anything unnatural or, not work for Latrell Mitchell. I want him to be in the best possible position to go after the game. And I want him at left center, marking up against the rookie that's come in Robert Toia at right center as well. Latrell Mitchell would be licking his lips at that. He would love the fact that he's next to Robert Toia, a guy that's never played Origin, lots of pressure. And not only that, Robert Toia is going to be inside a guy that generally doesn't defend well in Origin or just generally at the moment. Val Holmes' defense over the past 2 years has been a real concern. I think that having Toia and Val Holmes together, we'll talk about it when we get to Queensland, but that is worrying for me. It's a huge, huge risk to take. Obviously, last time Toia marked up against Latrell at centre, he did, for the most part, a great job. And I actually think as well, we'll get to it more in depth when we get to Queensland. He's a great pick to mark up against Latrell. We're going to get to it in a second, getting carried away there. Let's stay on New South Wales. Just some final touch-ups on New South Wales in regards to their squad and just getting into all the points here as well. I think we've pretty much touched on everything. Hudson Young, I'd probably rather start him than bench him. I think that he would have a lot more impact starting a game and just probably playing the full 80. I'd much rather have a Angus Crichton coming through the middle of the field and creating havoc with his fend, getting early ball, maybe some tip-on plays to Angus Crichton. He just comes on and just goes mongrel with that fend, running ballistic. His footwork at the line, he's super hard to handle. He runs so awkward and straight up with that big fend. You just can't get a good hold of him. I'd love that through the middle, and I think he'd have a lot more impact because he's a lot bigger of a body as well. Hudson Young. Hudson Young's good through the middle from a defensive perspective. From an attacking point of view, I'd probably rather have Angus Crichton coming through the middle of the field. So I actually wouldn't be shocked if for the first 50 minutes, Angus Crichton plays left back row, and then Angus Crichton moves into the middle, and we see Hudson Young go to left back row for the last 30. That for me could work out really well. I think that could be a nice little combo. Maybe even earlier than that, you see Crichton move into the middle, or even just get a spell in general. But I think that, Hudson Young for me would be a much better starter and would be a much better left back row specialist compared to an Angus Crichton that can come on in the middle. He can come on at the edge and give Hudson Young a spell. He can come on in a lot more positions, and he's a lot more unpredictable off the bench. So that's probably the way that I would go, and it's the way that I have got in my predictions. But obviously, Laurie Daly thinks different. He's got him on the bench there in jersey 16. What have we not talked about yet? I think we've pretty much covered everything, guys that missed out, all that sort of stuff. Max King. I love the selection of Max King. There was one bit for me, or at least for Laurie Daly, Evan. He talked about it in the interview, and just watching that, inspired me to back Laurie Daly in that Max King pick. It was that Titans game. He had that obviously big tackle in the previous bit of the set on the opposite end. Took a carry, played the ball. They spread the ball left. I think it might have been Brian Kelly or Philip Sami that intercepted it, ran the length of the field. Max King, after they managed to wrap him up, I think it was one of the boys that wrapped him up, the outside backs, wrapped him up. He runs 80 metres to get back in the defensive line for the next tackle and makes the try-saving tackle on the player. It shows commitment, it shows desperation, and it shows a really good attitude as well, which at the end of the day is why King is sitting in jersey number 17. So, love Max King. I think he's going to have a real good stint and just go absolutely bananas. He's a guy that can come on and play big minutes if there's injuries throughout the middle of the field as well, which is what I really love. Haas looks to be cleared of any serious injury. Payne Haas, obviously there was concern with him going into this one with an injury that he sustained in the previous game. He looks all good to go. He's been cleared of anything serious, had scans today when we're recording the podcast on the Monday night, and he is all good to go. Very excited. Trell and To'o obviously have their left edge combination. As I said, Trell's going to be licking his lips at this Toia pick as well. Super excited for this Blues team. I rate it too. I think it's a really good team. The only thing that I am super concerned about, other than a lot of the other stuff, the nitpicky stuff and where players are playing, who's right, who's left, minutes disparities, things like that. The only thing that really troubles me is the coverage of the spine in the reserves. There's just no coverage there. So that worries me. Everything else I'm okay with. Little bit of a concern around Edwards, little bit of concern around Critter with injuries, but other than that, it's really only the coverage of the spine in the 18, 19, 20. That bugs me a little bit. But other than that, it's good. Let's move to Queensland. Obviously, the guys that missed out, let's just mark this down. 33. Where are we at? 33, 26. 26. Awesome. Guys that missed out for Queensland, the snubs. I actually think that this is probably the biggest snubbing out of all of them. It's the one that confuses me the most because there's no injury, there's nothing. Corey Horsburgh. How could you not include Corey Horsburgh in your 17? I just don't understand. He has been outstanding. He reeks of an Origin player. He just comes on and is an absolute mongrel on the field, can play edge, can play middle, can play big minutes. He is an Origin player, and for me, has been in the better form compared to a Lindsay Collins, compared to a Mo Fodawaker. I'd be picking him over both of those guys in a heartbeat, at least just in my opinion. I would pick him over Firma. I would pick him over Liero. I do like the Queensland side, and I understand what they're going for in regards to a smaller pack, but I just think that Horsburgh probably deserved it, and he probably is a lot of what you're looking for, rather than a Mo Fodawaker and a Collins who are very one-dimensional, hard-running front rowers. I'd just much rather a hard-running front rower that can ball play in a Horsburgh and break the game open. You know, you've got that in Tino, you've got that in Carrigan. I get it. But gee, I would have loved to have seen Horsburgh back up and play Origin because he is just an absolute weapon and an animal, and he just reeks of Origin. And I would have just loved to have seen him get in biffs with some of the other guys as well on the other team, and just that passion on display. I would have loved to have seen it because he just personifies passion, Corey Horsburgh. So huge not to see him there. I think it has to be the biggest non-selection that I have seen in both of these sides easily. Biggest non-selection. Now, we'll sort of get to this pick because it's probably the most controversial selection. Not the non-selection, the selection out of the whole of all of these sides as well. But Robert Toia's obviously been picked at right centre. Guys that missed out, Dane Gagai, with all of the experience. He's a guy that always turns up in Origin. He would have defended the troll very well. I think that he is a guy that you would back 100%, especially playing with Val Holmes last year. You get the familiarity with combos. Gagai would probably be the one that I would have gone for with all these injuries to Cobbo and to other guys as well, Murray Taulagi. I think that it is a humongous call to go with a young guy that's played 10 games. In saying that, Payne Haas made his Origin debut in 2019 after 10 games as well, so it has happened before. Brad Fittler was an example I think I used. I believe he only played 14 games before his debut. Ben Eichen played 4 games before his debut. Yeah, very different times, but it's not like this is irregular. It has happened in the past with players, making their Origin debuts only after a few games. I mean, Jesus, we were all talking about Jackson Purdue making the Origin squad. Some people had him in their starting 13s. I don't think it's that humongous of a thing that he's only played 10 games. What has me more is the fact that I would probably say that Dane Gagai, who's been there before and has the experience in Origin, would probably have been the better selection, especially when you're getting him to defend Latrell and Brian To'o, two of the more dangerous attacking outside backs in the game. It's a huge test and it's a huge call to make as well. But it's great to see that Robert Toia is backed, and he'd have that confidence as well from Billy Slater that he was the guy that got picked over a Dane Gagai, over even a Philip Sami, who I thought was probably one of the informed backline players in the competition to start the year. Does that sound outrageous? Maybe. I don't think it does. I think that Sami's been in terrific form for the Gold Coast Titans, Phil Sami, and I just feel like he might have been a shout there on the wing with Val Holmes moving back into the centres. But then again, I think he probably would have had to have gone with a right centre just because Val Holmes, for me, after last year, probably proved that defensively at centre isn't the best idea, and particularly in Game 2, that got exploited quite a bit by the New South Wales left edge. So I think that they've gone with a good option in regards to picking a right centre, and it's not something that we would have thought of. I mean, our side was Val Holmes and Selwyn Cobbo on the right side. We had Val Holmes in the centres in our predicted team as well. But, you think about it a little bit more and you have this side and you rest with it for a bit. You sort of write your notes, and you think about combos and things like that. Maybe right centre, picking a right centre over a right winger with Val Holmes was probably the better option. But yeah, Gagai and Sami were two guys that I would have had in there. Sami would probably have a little bit of concern around the defence. Gagai I would have backed 100%, and he has the experience. But I think Billy Slater's got a good mix as well in this side of bringing in youth and experience, a real good mix there, because you've obviously got guys that are debuting in Toia. You've got guys that are debuting in Firma and Liero as well. But then you've also got the veterans in there, in your Mo Fodawakas, in your Lindsay Collins, guys that have played a few Origin games now and are pretty seasoned into the Origin arena. So it's a really, really good mix. Jaden Sewer for me is a big one. I think that Jaden Sewer is a guy that probably, he was in my 17 at least, in the right edge back row. I would have had him there in a heartbeat. Defensively, very strong. And attacking wise, I think in Game 1 he proved himself, and then Game 2 he was snubbed, and you're sort of sitting there scratching your head. Why was he dropped? He was really good. But yeah, a guy that's missed out. I don't know what Billy Slater has seen in his game to snub him out completely, not even in the squad. But yeah, he's a guy that I would have had in there for sure. Jaden Sewer. And And then as well, Xavier Savage was a little bit of a smoky pick as well. Like if you're wanting an outside back to come in with a bunch of injuries over the past few weeks and to start the year, yeah, there was a bit of a rough patch in between, but he's been in some pretty good form. And last week he was outstanding. I think that he'd be able to handle himself in that arena. And he's a guy that at the start of the year we had a big call to say that he'd be in Origin at some stage. I still think that if, Queensland come out and defensively they're not that good or they don't go well in game one, I think there's a real chance Xavier Savage makes his Origin debut. If there's obviously Murray Taulagi still injured and Cobbo still injured, real chance for me that he comes in for sure. But those are the main guys. I think the main one was Corey Horsburgh. For me, that troubled me a little bit. I didn't think that he was going to miss out. I had him on my bench there for sure. He was a shoo-in. Other guys that I had Jamal Fogarty is my 18th man. Obviously, that didn't eventuate. Jai Gray, my squad, that didn't eventuate just for a bit of experience. They've gone in a little bit of a different direction. But let's go through and compare. So in regards to the 17s, where are we at? 40-39. I didn't actually do that for New South Wales, which is awesome. Let's get stuck into the Queensland side. Fullback, KP. We've got that as well. Wingers, Xavier Coates, Val Holmes. Our wingers were Selwyn, Cobbo, and Coates. Obviously, Cobbo has an injury, so he's out of the selection warrantability. Obviously injured. Dim Murray Taulagi can't be picked. Centers, they've got Hammer and Robert Toia. We went Hammer and Holmes. In the halves, Munster DCE. They had Munster DCE. We had Ruben Cotter and Carrigan. They have gone with Mo Fodawaker and Tino. Lock forward was Tino for us. They had Carrigan, so not too much different there. Back rowers, we had Jaden Sewer and Bo Firma. They have got Nanai and Cotter, which I don't mind as well. We'll get into that in a second. Their bench is Dearden, Collins, Firma, Liero. Our bench was Dearden, Horsburgh, Gilbert, who's obviously injured and unavailable, and Kurt Mann in jersey 17. Our extended bench was Fogarty, Mo Fodawaker, and Jai Gray. They have in there, Kurt Mann at 18th man, Jesse Arthurs at 19th man, and Kula Kefu Finet Fuliaki in jersey number 20. Is that still the case? Yes, it is. So look, good team, and I also think that it's a team that will, be a lot different to what they've had in the past. I think that they've gone for a lot more of a mobile pack, which is really, really good. I like the fact that they've gone for that as well. I think that it's a point of difference to New South Wales. We've got a little bit more of a larger and aggressive pack, especially around tired forwards once you bring Fermor and Liero into the game. Bit of ruck speed, quick play the balls. These guys have got really good leg speed. I think that they'd be able to trouble New South Wales. I'd probably go with Kurt Mann over Liero for that sort of style of play, but it looks like that's what they've gone for. I think there's a real chance that Fermor could end up playing a little bit of the game through the middle of the field just to get that ruck speed, play the balls, things like that. But I also think that he could go straight to left edge back row and Cotter goes straight into the middle. Regardless, I've got Cotter playing the full 80 minutes. I think that Cotter will play the full 80 in this one. I think that he is a guy that can do that as well. He's done it for Queensland in the past. He's played full games on the edge. I do think, though, he will move into the middle with Bo Firma being on the bench. I think Bo Firma is going to get at least 25 minutes in this game, but Ruben Cotter will get the full 80 in my opinion. Just in regards to talking points in this one, we obviously had the Cotter one there. The biggest one, we've got to start with it, Robert Toia. Obviously picked in this side. It is a massive call. They could have gone in a multitude of different directions here. We've already discussed a few of the options. I mean, Cobbo and Taulagi, obviously injured. Xavier Savage, Dan Gagai, Philip Asami, those are guys that come to mind. Jack Howarth, if he was available. There's Jackson Purdue. Granted, he's probably had just over the amount of games or about the same as Robert Toia. But, he was obviously an option and a guy a lot of people were talking about as well. But, yeah, Robert Toia was the guy that was picked. And I think that Robert Toia, as I said, if there's a lot of guys that you can pick that have, been sort of proven against Latrell Mitchell and marking up against Latrell, Robert Toia is probably that guy. He had a real good game against Latrell, in my opinion, defensively. For the most part, covered him quite well and wasn't afraid of that matchup as well. He went after it with full force. he is going to be the next big thing. He's going to be in this Queensland side in the future. Robert Toia, he was obviously the next big thing for the past few years. Obviously, a bunch of ACLs have troubled him. So the journey's actually been quite, I guess, it's been inspiring to watch. I think 3 back-to-back ACLs he's had, Robert Toia, being in and out of the side and in and out of comprehension. He's been a Roosters junior. He played under 19s Origin a few years back. He killed it. He's a real talented footballer, Robert Toia, and he's finally got his opportunity for the Roosters, and he's absolutely taken it with both hands, and he started the year very, very well, and it's great to see a junior do that as well. So Robert Toia to play 10 games and to be, in Origin contention and to be looked at by some of the greats like Billy Slater, I think he's going to get a lot of confidence from that, and he's going to go after this with 2 hands. I think he really is. I think that this is a guy that will thrive in this arena. He loves being under pressure, it seems like, and he takes it with 2 hands. He's had some big performances over the last few weeks, particularly his most recent performance. He was outstanding, even though, it was overshadowed a little bit by the performance of Mark Nwanganitawase and some of the tries, efforts that he had. Robert Toia was good. So I think that Robert Toia, it is a good pick. It's a controversial pick. It's a massive call. He's going up against Latrell and Toto, 2 of the better attacking players in the competition. Defensively, he has had lapses throughout the year. He is next to a guy that over the past 18 to 24 months has not been the best defender in Valentine Holmes. It is a fucking massive risk to have Toia and Holmes together, let alone having Toia in Origin after 10 games. But as I said, it has happened before. We've seen it with Payne Haas. We've seen it in the past with a few other different guys as well. Random Stats Guy actually put up a post, which we chucked on our story. I might even get it up right now, just to give you guys a few examples of people that have, been in this sort of situation before with only limited games. Let's get it up. Random Stats Guy. Where are you? This is taking ages. We love it. So just a few guys that have been in a similar boat with limited NRL experience that have been called into the Origin arena. Where is this post? Here we go. So Ben Ikin had 4 NRL games in 1995 before he got picked in game 1. Payne Haas had 10 games in 2019 before he was selected. Brad Fittler had 12 games of NRL before he was picked in game 2 in 1990. Trent Barrett, he had 12 games of NRL experience before getting picked in game 2 in 1990. In 1997, game 3. Brent Tate, 2002, he only had 14 games before getting picked in game 3. Matt Scott, 14 games before being picked in game 1 of 2006. Carl Webb, 2001. Game 1. He only had 15 games of NRL experience. Will Hopewade, 15 games of NRL experience. He gets picked in 2011. Xavier Coates, 15 games of NRL experience, a more recent one there, before being selected for Queensland in Game 1 of 2020. Game 1 2022, Jeremiah Nanai, 16 games of NRL experience before being picked in the Origin arena. This has happened before. It has happened actually on multiple occasions, and those are just some examples of that as well. So I think that we can be critical. It is still a massive call. It's still a massive risk. It was a risk when Xavier Coates came in. It was a risk when Nanai came in. But I think that, at the end of the day, that was pretty gross. At the end of the day, Toya's been picked in this arena. He's been picked for a reason. He's been playing really good footy, and I am super excited for him as well to come into this arena. It is going to be a massive call. There's plenty of pressure on him, but I think that he's going to grab it with 2 hands, and the fact that he's already been backed enough to be selected in this arena after 10 games is just going to give him the world of confidence, and I think that that's going to be the real focus for him throughout the week. Billy's going to give him a fucking shitload of confidence going up against Latrell in State of Origin football. DCE obviously selected. We knew that this was going to happen. We had DCE in. We love DCE. I'm a huge fan of DCE in his career, while some aren't. And obviously Titans fans wouldn't be. I am a big fan of DCE and his career. He's won comps. He's done a lot in the game. He will go down as one of the great halfbacks, and that's pretty hard to push back on. I do think, though, that we probably weren't ready for it this year because obviously Sam Walker's out with injury, still coming back from his ACL. Fogarty's still getting on as well. You're not really building for the future with that selection. And DCE's still got plenty of great footy in him. While we haven't seen that of late, he has been in a bit of a rough patch. coming into this Origin game, he is going to, with a real good pack behind him, really turn it on. Him and Cam Munster, being in this Origin arena, he always gives it 110%. So DC is going to come out and he's going to, really do it. But is this the last series that we see DCE in? That's a real question that we've got to ask ourselves. Is this the last series that DCE plays in before hanging up the rep boots? He's 36 years of age, sorry. He's going to be thinking about that. He probably thought about it coming into this Origin series. But he's grabbed the jersey with two hands, and I think he's going to do a great job for Queensland. I have no doubt about it. He did it very well in Game 1 last year. He looked great in Game 3. I think that he is going to come in with that same sort of mentality and look really good in attacking ball. Munster back is huge. Obviously, Munster coming back after injury. Tom Dearden was the 5'8" last year. Munster coming back is huge. Obviously, the form that Munster's been in as well is massive. It is a huge boost for the Queensland side, and I think that he is going to come in and do a great job as well. It will be very interesting because it's not going to be very long before we see a completely different halves pairing for Queensland, whether it be Mam and Walker, whether it be Dearden and Walker, which is more likely. It's going to be super interesting to see what we get over the next few years because it is something we're realistically going to have to be thinking about in 2 years' time when you're realistically getting these two absolute greats of the game in Munster and DCE hanging up those representative boots, which is going to be a real scary thought. But let's talk about this game first. I just thought it was a real good, interesting point to bring up. I'd be keeping a real close eye on Arthurs on the bench. We've seen some late changes before for Queensland. I just have a little inkling that we might see a little cheeky change. Now, Toia is coming in with a limited experience. I think he could play. I think, though, that there is a slight chance we see Arthurs play. I would be keeping a little bit of an eye on him. Nothing against Robert Toia. But I do think that Jesse Arthurs, he's the top try scorer in the NRL. He's been in great form. He looks good at, coming out of yardage. He's tough. I think he could be a realistic option maybe if you move Holmes back to centre and have Arthurs there on the wing, maybe a late change before kickoff. If Toia getting picked is a little bit of a psychological thing. New South Wales, they come in, they prep for Robert Toia, and then there's a late change. Arthurs comes in, and it really just fucks with them. I think it's a realistic option. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Toia will play, but definitely one just to keep a little bit of an eye on if we're really thinking inside the box and outside the room a little bit. If we're sort of overanalyzing a little bit as well, but definitely one that I'd be watching though. Jesse Arthurs though, I think it's a great pick, and I think that he might be a little, I'd say, 20% chance of playing. So keep an eye on it. KP. The form hasn't been great from KP. A lot of people were calling for Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow to be picked at fullback for Queensland. Obviously killing it at fullback for the Dolphins of late. He's in the centres, obviously backed up at centre last year. He's going to have a new outside back with him in Xavier Coates, not Murray Taulagi this year, which is going to be good. I think for the Hammer, I think that Coates, obviously the aerial specialist there, going up against Lomax, that battle is going to be insane. Those two are going to be going at it to great aerial specialists there. The Hammers in the centres, KP's at fullback. I love KP. I think that he always seems to turn it up in Origin, and he is an absolute danger. I know that he was picked off the bench and played in the forwards last year, but he is so good when he's at fullback and at his best. So I think that he's going to kill it in this one. He's going to be a real threat. I think he's going to be in some of the better form that we've seen him in as well, with a good pack behind him, with good halves that can get him the ball when he wants it rather than every set. He is going to be an absolute nightmare, KP, giving him the right ball at the right time in the right space. He is going to be an absolute nightmare. And just him linking up with Hammer and Coates and Toia and Holmes, that's going to be scary as well. So KP is going to be the one to watch in this one as well. Kurt Mann, congratulations to him. Obviously, the Bulldogs are a little bit unlucky having another 18th man in Origin and having another guy that has to miss out. It isn't Burton this year, so at least you can hold your hats high on that. But obviously, Kurt Mann will be not able to play this week for the Doggies. But I love the pick. He's the perfect 18th man. He can cover any position. He is literally the carbon copy of what Connor Watson is for the Blues. To be honest, if I was, in the, selection table for Queensland, which I wouldn't, the scum, but if I was, I would have probably gone with him at 14 because I just think, as I said, he's the carbon copy of Watson. He can come on throughout a game, cover a lot of positions. Dearden worries me a little bit at 9. We haven't seen it yet. I think it's a huge risk to play. It puts a lot of pressure on Harry Grant to potentially have to play the full 80 minutes as well, which you probably don't want from Harry Grant coming back from a hamstring injury going into Origin. And if Harry Grant does go down and Dearden has to go into 9, I just don't want Dearden playing big minutes at hooker either. So that worries me a little bit. I know that he was great last year and you just have to have him in the side somewhere, but 14 for me is just not the go. I'd love him in a roaming role, but if he's coming into play 9, I am just a little bit worried in that. And if he's not coming into play 9, it worries me as well with Harry Grant coming back from a hammy injury as a neutral spectator. That worries me a little bit for Harry Grant's sake because it might mean that he has to play the full 80 minutes. What else have we got here as well? What are our other notes? Cotter in the back row, Ruben Cotter. We already talked about it. He's going to play probably 80 minutes or close to 80 minutes in this game. I do think that being at back row, though, it saves, I guess, the headache of, trying to figure out if he's going to get moved there late before kickoff. He is there now. Defensively, he is going to aim up in that position as well. He's been really good there, playing big stints in the back row position. He is a specialist there. So I do rate the call to have him in the back row. I think he does play right side back row. I don't think he plays left. I think we do see Nanai sit in the left edge back row. I think that just defensively he's a lot better on the left side than what he has been on the right. On the right side, he averages between, I think, 5 and 7 missed tackles per game, which is wild. So I'd probably, much rather Nanai on the left-hand side with Cotter, the defensive specialist, on the right side, arcing up against what is going to be a very dangerous attacking edge, with obviously Angus Crichton, Latrell, and To'o there. So that's probably the way that I would go. I'm still a little bit worried about Nanai defensively, and that's why I probably just didn't have him in my team. But from an attacking perspective, he's a great attacker, he's a great hole runner, and a great aerial specialist as well, which is going to be an interesting little battle there between him and Liam Martin, who's proved over the past week or so that he can get up for a high ball as well. So that battle's going to be beautiful to watch. With the pack that they have selected here, Mo Fotuaika, Tino, and Carrigan, it does probably put a little bit of pressure on those 3 guys to play big minutes. Not so much Mo. I think Mo Fotuaika is going to play 20 minutes. I think he'll have a very similar role to Gerbo, just to bash out the first 20, and then you'll get the other guys on for the rest of the game. I think Cotter will play 80, as I said. I think he'll move into the middle at some stage. But it does put pressure on Tino, Cotter, and Carrigan to play around 50 to 60 minutes because I don't think Liero is going to get more than 20, 25 minutes. I don't think Firma is going to get more than that. Fermore's more likely to come on the edge. Collins, I just don't back at the moment to play more than 30 minutes. Collins' defense in the game against the Dogs was poor. It was extremely lazy. He looks unfit coming back from this injury. It worries me a lot. It worries me not as much, but very similar to what Kurt Capewell did coming in for the Maroons last year. And look, as a Blues fan, love it. As a neutral spectator and wanting to see the best game possible, I just feel like Collins being selected in this side after that defensive effort, it does send a bit of a bad message. Obviously, he's an incumbent. He's a guy that always gets selected there. And you know that he'll probably come in and do a good job. Maybe I'm overreacting here. But after that defensive performance against the Dogs, he let 2 try-scoring opportunities in, one with Bailey Hayward running straight past him while he's still walking or jogging back from the previous tackle. He was offside. Bailey Hayward runs straight past him. And then a one-on-one miss with Matt Burton running through a hole. It really just, it was a little bit lazy for me. It just shows that his fitness levels aren't at the level they need to be coming in to the Origin arena. And if I was a Queensland fan, I'd be shitting myself, honestly. I would have picked Horsburgh in there, who I can back to play big minutes if there's injury. He can come on and ball play. He can come on and just break the game open, Corey Horsburgh. Lindsay Collins, for me, hasn't been great all year. He's had a real tough start to the year. And since coming back from that injury, off the bench for the Dogs, that was a terrible game. So that does worry me. Again, maybe I'm being overcritical, I'm being harsh, but it was an off game. He can be better. He can play great games of Origin, and we know that for sure. But yeah, it's a pretty hectic selection, and I just feel like it could hurt Queensland if he comes into the Origin arena with similar form. He probably won't, but it's just definitely something worth bringing up. Yeah, look, with the bench, again, in regards to the big minute guys as well, as I said, with Firma and Liero, these sort of guys, they're probably not going to get more than 25 minutes each. So it does put pressure on Tino, on Carrigan, who, to be honest, I'd probably want in, playing at least 2 25-minute stints each. I think that those would be the best sort of roles for those two guys. And in the Origin arena, you want your forwards fresh for the most amount of time. Especially with the intensity of last year's series, particularly that Game 3 game. That was full on. It was super intense. And I just feel like, if that level of intensity is replicated here and you're playing these guys for longer than 50 minutes, they're going to come out fucking hammered, and there's going to be a point in the game where they are super fatigued. So the minute work and the minutes disparity is going to be super important, and the rotations through the middle, and just, as I said, those interchanges are going to be super important and prove crucial for Queensland in regards to their forward rotation. Smaller pack, more mobile, point of difference. We've talked about that already. What have we not talked about yet? What have we got here? Collins' form, Nanai left. We've talked about that already. Let's have a look. Valentine Holmes' defense we've talked about already. I think that's pretty much it. We talked about the smaller pack. Dearden's role at 14. We've talked about that. Man, the perfect 18th man. Pressure on Harry Grant to play the full 80. We've talked about that as well. That's pretty much it for Queensland. I back the rest of the side. I think they've got a good team, and I think they'll put up a fight. I think it's going to be a real interesting game in Game 1. We'll do a full-on preview off the back of this podcast, obviously the day before the game, and it'll come out on YouTube as well, the Origin previews and reviews. Same as last year. So make sure you stay tuned for all that great content. Make sure you subscribe. Obviously knocked out a beautiful little hour here going through these Origin teams. So make sure if you like that content, you go ahead, you subscribe to the YouTube. If you love being a little bit of a footy nerd and getting stuck into the deep analysis of teams, get stuck in to this podcast, because we do a lot of that. We nerd out on team lists and things like that all the time. So click here, get stuck in, and we will see you guys in the next one.